Shading. It's a technique in art that we're all familiar with. Shading is what takes an ordinary flat drawing and turns it into something that looks super realistic or three-dimensional. When you shade a drawing, you're not only bringing life to that drawing, but you're also adding the element of art called value. Let's start by defining that word, value. Value is the lightness and darkness of an object. Please write that definition down in your packet. Again, value is the lightness and darkness of an object. To practice creating some values, we're going to first start off with our regular pencil, and we're going to create what's called a grayscale. Some of you may remember this from last year when we did our house project. To start your grayscale, you'd need to actually avoid the first box since white is our lightest value. In the second box, as light as you can possibly go, you want to first go in circular motions, not the back and forth streaking motion. Overlap those circles over and over again, but keep your pressure really light. You want to fill your entire box, and when you move on, you're going to press down just a little bit more in that third box. I know I sound like a broken record here, but really to achieve mastery in shading, you want to make sure that you're going in circular motions, overlapping them. Avoid going back and forth or streaking. It's not going to come out looking great at all. Yuck.
I'm going to fast forward here, but keep going on with those boxes.
For our second grayscale, you're going to choose any one colored pencil of your choice, and we're going to make a grayscale here the same way we did with our regular pencil. Let's go ahead and skip that first box and move right into our second box. As light as we could possibly go, we're going to go in circular motions the same way and try to fill that entire box with just one value. As you move on, remember each box you're going to press down a little bit more and a little bit more.
Let's fast forward.
For our final grayscale, we're going to be using two colored pencils. This is to get a more realistic effect. So to begin, we're going to go through and recreate that same grayscale that we did in the middle with a one colored pencil. And then you're going to take the complementary color of that color, whatever color you started with, and start mixing it in with the same pressure that you used in that base color. So in this case, I started with orange, and now I'm going to take the complement blue and go through and lightly add in the blue to that second box, a little bit more to that third, even more in the fourth, and a lot more in the fifth. By mixing in that base color's complementary color, you can see that we can achieve a lot darker values here. However, if we were to do this with the color black, you would notice that you would start to lose that it's the color orange underneath. It would basically turn into a muddy mess, and you wouldn't be very successful with it. If you used gray or brown for your grayscale, obviously there's no complementary color for that, so you can simply go through and add in blue, purple, or green to make your darker values. Now let's go ahead and shade in your apple. I'm going to use colored pencils here, but you can use regular pencil if you'd like. To start with colored pencils, I'm going to take my base color, which is red. I'm going to think about adding in some highlights here, so mixing in a yellow, and then taking the complement green to get in my nice shadows at the very bottom and on the edge. I've started here with my base color. Looking at my reference picture, I looked for that highlight and went a little bit lighter there. Now, taking my yellow pencil, I'm going to go into that highlight and add a little bit on top of it, just to kind of give it a more realistic effect. Blend in some lighter colors there. Anywhere that I have some of those lighter values, I'm going to go through and add in this yellow. Again, this is just to get more of a realistic effect. Once you're done with your highlights, go back into your base color again and start adding in darker values where you see them on your reference picture. So I'm just going to simply apply more pressure on the edges where I find there are darker values. When trying to do realistic shading, one thing you want to remember is to blend your values together. So right now I have a dark value right next to the light value. I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to start to blend the two together so you can't see the boundary between dark and light. It's also important to remember the shape of the object that you're blending. Here I'm trying to blend a circle to make it look like a three-dimensional sphere. So I need to make sure that I'm blending in that rounded motion. You can see the curve of the apple by the way that I'm adding in those dark and light values. Lastly, you're going to go into your apple, into where you have all your darker values, and add in your complementary color. So in this case, I'm using green. I'm going to look at my reference picture and look for those darker values, and then go through and press down fairly hard here, blending in that green. Not so much that the green takes over, but enough to create that dark, deep red color. Again, it's important to remember to go in nice circular motions when you're shading here. Also, when you're going in and adding in that complementary color, make sure that you're blending it nicely from the dark value into the lighter value. If you can follow these few steps that I've given you, you'll see that you can take a flat two-dimensional shape and turn it into a realistic three-dimensional form.